I'm going to walk you through how I plan my upcoming Europe trip. I will be spending about a month roughly in Austria, Slovenia, and Croatia. And so how did I plan it all? Well, I'm going to walk you through how I organized this trip. I'm Mike Dalton. I'm a teacher and a traveler, and this is Dalton's Detours. So basically, the first thing I had to come up with in any kind of trip like this, of course, are the dates and the locations. There was really only one date I had to worry about, and that was Zagreb, Croatia, between June 26th and July 1st. Some friends of mine who I'll be going on the trip with, the Jacinas, Peggy and Jim. Peggy has always been in an organization that is a Croatian dance group. I always forget the name of it, but since I've known her, since the early 2000s, her and her daughters have been involved in this organization, and their big festival this year is going to be in Zagreb. We've talked about going to Croatia for roughly 15 to 20 years, so we decided this was just a great time to do it. So those were the two dates that I had basically at minimum to work with. Now, I am a teacher. That allows me a little extra time, and of course, the bonus is, you get time off. The downside as a traveler is you end up with very much the peak season to deal with. I've always had to deal with that, so I'm kind of used to high prices and tickets and things like that, and I just plan accordingly. Peggy has some connections with a Croatian travel company that she's used before. It's a friend of hers. We decided at that point as a group of maybe 5 or 6, because her daughters and a few other people were going, basically from Zagreb all the way down to Dubrovnik. Zagreb, Zadar, Split, Korčula, Dubrovnik. So now my dates are get to Zagreb by June 26th, fly out July 11th. So I then had to make some decisions, and my decision, of course, was I was going to arrive early and I was going to stay late. So at this point, my planning is really simple. I have to start with flights. I need to find out where I can fly into and where I can fly back from. And so I start on Google Flights and Skyscanner. This is always where I start with those things. I start with Cincinnati Airport in Ohio, well, officially Kentucky, Dayton Airport, Louisville, Indianapolis, Columbus. But I will also look at places like Atlanta or New York City, Toronto, just in case I can find a really cheap flight and maybe I could stay a night in that city, go a little early or whatever. On that end, I could look from any of those vantage points. But in Europe, I didn't really care. I mean, as long as I got to Zagreb by June 26th and I go somewhere else after Dubrovnik on July 11th, I could fly to Barcelona, Paris, London. It really didn't matter. In the end, I found a flight from Toronto to Vienna, Austria, and back. It was around $1,000. On Air Canada, no frills. I think at that stage, they're probably just going to strap me on the wing. I'm going to probably have to pay a little extra for my luggage if I don't want to just do carry-on. Still deciding on all that. And I'll do a little packing thing next week. But I have a buddy who lives in Buffalo, so that solved a lot of problems. I'm going to go up. He and I are going to go to Toronto, go to a Blue Jays game. He's going to drop me off at the airport the next day, keep my car. That way I don't have to pay for parking. But as far as getting there and back, that solved a big problem for me. Now I know that I'm flying into Vienna and I'm flying back from Vienna. So I have to get from Vienna to Zagreb and from Dubrovnik back to Vienna. And I allowed myself some time, meaning I'm leaving on June 20th now. I'm arriving in Vienna on June 21st. I'm flying back on July 15th. So I have 4 nights in Vienna at the end, but I have to get from Vienna to Zagreb. And so this is where the next part of the planning came in. How do I get back to Vienna? And where do I go? Do I just go straight to Zagreb or not? Well, to simplify the end part, I'm flying back from Vienna on July 11th. I will have 4 nights in Vienna at the tail end of the trip, which is perfect. But on the way down to Zagreb, I decided to immediately leave Vienna, go straight to a city called Graz, G-R-A-Z, Graz, Austria. I'm going to spend 2 nights in Graz, then get to Slovenia, Ljubljana. I'm going to spend 3 nights in Slovenia, and then I'm going to get to Zagreb. So that has given me a little bit of a before and after this whole Croatian experience to see a little bit of Slovenia and Austria. Once I made those decisions, I then started booking my hotels. Well, first and foremost, the 10-day tour of Croatia includes my hotels. And we luckily got 10 people. So that 10-day trip, all breakfast, all transportation, hotels, and some dinners and lunches and wine tours and things like that, ran me about $2,300. But that planning side of it, I don't have to even worry about. So that's taken care of. Zagreb is somewhat taken care of because I'm staying in the same hotel with a lot of the people. We're staying at the Sheraton Zagreb. The hotels in Vienna and Graz in Slovenia are the ones I needed to deal with. Well, two of the hotels I had friends stay at before, they were recommended to me, and the other one I just found myself, and I got a somewhat cheaper hotel. These three hotels combined would have probably run me about $1,100 or $1,200. They were somewhere between $100 and $150 a night. Nothing fancy, but centrally located and seemed very, very nice. Well, these three hotels, I use travel points for. So I use my travel points on my Chase Sapphire Reserved for that instead of my flight. So anyway, that saved me $1,100 or $1,200 right there. I did a little bit of research on this, but to be honest, I kind of looked at the train schedule from Vienna all the way down, and I saw some of the main hubs were these two cities. And so I then booked my train ticket from Vienna to Graz, from Graz to Ljubljana, and from Ljubljana to Zagreb. Those ran me roughly less than $150, and my flight from Dubrovnik back to Vienna, about $150. So that is kind of the organizational, picking my dates and my locations and kind of working around what I knew I was already doing. I mean, if you're planning a trip just from scratch, you just pick a place you really want to go. And oftentimes you can find flying into Rome and flying back from Florence, or flying into Madrid and flying back from Barcelona. You can kind of work your way around using Google Flights and Skyscanner. And when it came to hotels, like I said, I booked them through my travel portal on Chase, but I researched them on hotels.com and on booking.com, and also through recommendations from a few friends that had been there. At this point, like right now, I've got all of the logistics taken care of. I know where I've got to be and so on. And so what I've been doing the last few weeks, and will continue to do for the next few weeks, I just put together a Google Doc for each city. I have a Google Doc for Graz, for Ljubljana, for Zagreb, all the way back to Vienna. And in those Google Docs, I keep it pretty straightforward. I try to figure out the basic transportation. How am I going to get around? I try to figure out what are 4 or 5 must-sees in these places. But I make a list of about 5 to 10. I put a few stars by the ones I really, really want to see. And then I make a list of food and drink I want to try. Things that are unique to the place. Occasionally restaurants. I usually do it by area. Somewhere near the central market. Somewhere in this part of town, and that way it's not something I feel obligated to see or go to, but if I'm in that area and I see it, maybe that's where I stop for lunch. And just being a person who likes history, I tend to read up a little on the city, especially if it's one I don't know as much about, like Graz or Ljubljana. And that's pretty much it at that point. I like to remain somewhat flexible. Now on this trip, I'll have a lot of flexibility on the solo parts of my trip. Obviously, when I'm in Zagreb, there's this Croatian festival that the people I know, I'm just going to follow whatever they do. That is kind of how I put my trips together. When I went to Spain or when I went to Japan, I kind of figured out the dates, figured out the big cities, got my flights immediately, and then kind of worked from there. How much time do I want to spend in each city? And then I just booked my hotels. And so I think that's a really somewhat simple way to do it. But I also think then once you're building an itinerary, you keep it as flexible as you can. But that's a preference. Everybody's got different preferences. And I go to every single city and every single country with the assumption that I'll be back. That just takes that stress away. If I don't see it, I don't see it. And I try to stay pretty laid back with that kind of stuff. With that said, I really do over plan all of it. I will have way too much information, but that's just something I enjoy. I follow a lot of people on YouTube, to be honest, who take great pride in just kind of showing up to the city, not planning too much and just experiencing it. And I think that's a great way to do it too. I just kind of like the research aspect of it. So that's just me. Hopefully that gives you some ideas on planning things. Again, use something like tripit.com, or there's a lot of these free apps you can use to really organize your trip. It does it all for you. That's what I use. Hopefully one day you'll get to do your own European adventure. This is Dalton's Detours.